I'm so pleased there was this festival. I actually came back from campaigning in Thiruvananthapuram for our local self-government elections just to be in time for this closing. And I think it's wonderful that we've been able to bring together different countries from South Asia, shared gastronomic heritage in this wonderfully named SAAG. And I wanted to congratulate Advaita, her colleagues, her fellow organizers for having brought us to this point. I've always been, by the way, you asked me only what my favorite vegetable was, so I said, if you asked me what my favorite food item is, I would have to say idli. Because it's the only thing I've eaten every single year, every single day for more than half a century, except in those countries where it was literally impossible to get it. But when I was living in America, I used to make my own idlis from scratch. So I'm really a total sort of idli nut.
Next time you come to Bangalore, I'll take you to the best idli.
Excellent. I've heard about this. There's a side street. There is an article I've read. Yes, I would love to see this. I'm told it's not easy to find, however, so you will have to. I'll get your address and phone number from Advaita. So in any case, food obviously is in many ways a microcosm of our culture, and it reflects both our diversity and our integration. Unity in diversity is a big cliche in our country, but it's striking. No need? This is enough. We have often been identified with food. After all, one of the reasons that Western countries first came to India was to buy spices. Indeed, colonization resulted from our possession of spices, which is probably not a happy outcome, but nonetheless, the truth is that that is one of the things. I mean, pepper, black pepper from India was prized by the Romans going back before the birth of Christ, and certainly by the Western world for centuries thereafter. And indeed, for the preservation of meats and so on, before refrigeration was invented, spices were indispensable. So we've had a long tradition of that. But coming back to the unity and diversity argument, I would say that just as spices vary and cultural practices vary and cuisines vary, nonetheless they also bring us together. We have our own specialties, but the awareness of those specialties and the taste for them keeps us united, very much in a way in which I have often argued politically that each Indian has his or her own identity, but that identity is secured by the existence of the carapace of a larger Indian identity. So also we can celebrate our Hyderabadi dum biryanis or our Lucknowi kebabs or our Gujarati dhoklas these days in particular, or our South Indian appams or whatever. We can celebrate that along with the knowledge that they all belong to this larger Indian meal. I used to say in America very often when I was asked about India, American melting pot, we're not a melting pot. We are actually a thali, because we are as a people a collection of different identities and different bowls. Because they're in separate bowls, they don't flow into each other. They don't necessarily flow into the next. But they belong together on the same platter, and they combine on your palate to give you a satisfying repast. And to my mind, that has always been, in many ways, the strength of Indian cuisine, that diversity and that unity. And just as families eat together, Indians tend to eat together. I've found the integration galloping. The fact is that when, say, in the 1950s, for the first time we became one sort of common political space, it would have been very difficult to get, say, a masala dosa or an idli in Delhi, or a chole bhature in Chennai. Today that is simply no longer the case. Any cuisine from any part of India is available in most of our cities and sometimes in our smaller towns, and that too has become an extraordinary measure of national integration across our country. At the same time, there is an international dimension, because we celebrate an Indian meal which would feature naan that came to us from Persia, or tandoori chicken first introduced by rulers from Uzbekistan, or aloo and hari mirch, which didn't exist in our country until they came from their discovery in Latin America a mere 400, 500 years ago. So there is this globalization of our cuisine going back before the term globalization became common. And yet at the same time we are rooted in what we do well. So we are, as a country, responsible for 70% of the spice production on the planet. 70% in one country, and that's ours. And I must say, my state is a good part of it as well. I did want to say, though I agree with you, we've talked enough politics and we should discuss food, that at the same time, the politicization of food is something I was planning to refer to since we've talked about it. I'll be very brief. But it seems to me that this is actually one area that ought to be above and beyond politics. In the kind of politics I would like to practice, one can share a civilized meal with a political opponent, enjoy different items, enjoy perhaps contrasting items, and at the same time enjoy the experience of the shared meal. And if that is a larger metaphor for the way in which I practice my politics, yes, it probably is, but it's not what our politics has been reduced to. And in many ways, what is happening with food in our country has become almost an image, a reflection of what is happening to politics in our country as well. The way in which literally eating meat or not has become a bone of contention, if I can use that mixed metaphor. What ought to be a celebration of togetherness. I mean, after all, I don't know how many of you have seen movies like Babette's Feast and so on, where the meal is celebrated as an occasion for a family to come together, a community to come together, and becomes a larger metaphor for a society coming together. Sadly, in our country, that meal is now dividing us, and that, I think, needs to be resisted. Certainly, I hope that this celebration of South Asian gastronomy, by showcasing both what is so different in our cuisines and at the same time what we have in common, by teaching us how we can enjoy tastes from other places in the subcontinent, while at the same time exposing outsiders, the few who have come to our tastes, and showing them how much we have in common and how much our differences actually bring us together. That might be a reminder of the rich heritage of diversity that we should also celebrate, that the importance of choice at the dining table, which all of us value. We all want a menu. We would be extremely offended if every restaurant we went to just gave us what they decided we should eat. Similarly, in life and in politics and in society, I hope we will celebrate today, through this festival, the broader value and virtue of choice. And meanwhile, let me wish all of you who've come here one last pun, fulfilling life ahead, and a very successful conclusion to this festival. Thank you very much.